that's another thing I forgot to mention. When he first started referring to the women as females, okay, he didn't even have to, if that had been all that he had said, like, scrap all the fantasy suite talk, scrap all the, like, sex ultimatum talk. If all he had said was in reference to these women as females, that would have told me literally everything I needed to know about him. Like, literally everything. And no, I will not elaborate. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Brianna's Bachelor Breakdown. I'm Brianna, your Bachelor Relationship Analyst. If you love getting into the nitty-gritty of the drama and unpacking all the relationships, then this channel is for you. And today we're going to be unpacking episode 2 of Gabby and Rachel's season. So let's go ahead and get started. So we open things up and Gabby and Rachel are talking about what they want to do that day. At first they wanted to have a pool party, but I guess it's raining, so they're trying to figure out a backup plan. And I first wanted to get into the looks that they have on today. This is one of my favorite parts about The Bachelorette, is just that there's so much more fashion to unpack and have fun with as opposed to The Bachelor, because The Bachelor leads usually don't have that strong of a sense of style. As we saw with Clayton and his blazer hoodie combo, I'm so glad that we are relieved of that sight on our screens every single week, and we can get back to looking at what looks Gabby and Rachel are serving up for us. So I really liked Gabby's sweater, like crop top thing. It was kind of basic in the front, but in the back she had like a little ribbon, like cross stitch tie type thing going on, and I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a lot of fun. She paired her with some mom jeans, and Rachel's look I really wanted to like. It was like, in theory, I really liked it. But sis has got to stop with just the all beige outfits, you know? The color, it doesn't look bad on her, but I feel like she can do so much more. Like, she could just pop so much more, and I don't really feel like she's allowing herself that room to explore what fashion really works for her and what colors really look good on her, and she just plays it safe all the time. Because this was just like their first premiere night where I liked the cut of this outfit. I like the style of it, but the color is just so drab and bleh that it just really turned me off to the whole thing in general. That aside, we move into the pageant portion of the day. I had mixed feelings about this. I was kind of glad, I was kind of disappointed because they do this type of stuff every single season, and it's always like the same thing, like gimmicks, like we want to see your personality, we want to see that you can let loose, and yeah, you know, like that's important in a partner. But I don't always think that this is the best way to like display it, you know, like some people are built for the stage and some aren't, so I always feel like the more effervescent people kind of have an unfair advantage in this type of scenario. But then I was glad in the sense because hopefully we got it over with, and hopefully we don't have to dedicate an entire group date to this type of activity, and we can just be done and move on. So all the guys get Speedos. A lot of testosterone seems to suddenly fill up the house, and they're doing push-ups and walking around showing their abs and their biceps. And listen, I'm not complaining. It was just really funny to see like the immediate like a macho party that started happening as soon as they changed into these Speedos. And so we kind of sped through a lot of the guys like gimmicks and stuff, which again, totally fine by me. The only one that really stuck out to me was Meatball, just because of how gross it was. Meatball pours an entire can of pasta sauce on his body for no apparent reason. Like that was his talent. There was nothing else along with that. So just question marks all around. And then the other person that kind of stuck out was Chris, because this is the first glimpse that we get into his personality. And he's like, yeah, I wanted to show the ladies the 3 side of me: basketball, beats, and leadership. And I was like, being a leader, like, that is a personality trait. Like, yeah, sure, but that's not really like a hobby. You know what I mean? Like, if someone says, what do you do for fun? I lead people. I really like to organize things. And knowing what we now know about Chris, I kind of want to backtrack a little bit. And I 100% believe that that is what he says when asked what he does for fun. I 1000% would bet any amount of money that he does tell people, I love to organize things and be in control and lead. Feel like groups of people are just bending to my every whim and will. So, you know, maybe that is a hobby for him. Not one that he's good at or that he seems to have any future talents in, but one that he certainly seems to enjoy nevertheless. So Chris does a little basketball beat, like, activity. He seems really satisfied with it. And that's all that matters. One other thing that stood out to me in this little snippet from Christopher was him calling himself an alpha. Automatic turn off for me. Whenever a guy feels the need to self-identify as an alpha, I'm the lead, I'm a macho, I've heard enough. I've heard enough. That's actually all I need to hear from you. Like, it's just, I don't believe in that. First of all, I don't believe that, like, some guys are alphas and some are betas. Like, I feel like everyone's just out here doing what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't subscribe to, like, I need an alpha male type dialogue. So that's first of all. And second of all, if that was a thing, like, if that did exist, I feel like guys who actually, like, were alphas wouldn't need to run around self-identifying as such. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that would just naturally be present in their personality and how they carry themselves. And they wouldn't have to yell to the rooftops about it. They wouldn't have to plant those seeds in everybody's head. So then after the pageant, we go to the after party. And it was an awkward stretch. I think there were 6 guys maybe that got invited, most of which we didn't really investigate their conversations with the ladies. So I don't want to say it felt like a waste of time, but it kind of felt like a waste of time. Like, I don't feel like the story was moved along that much with those guys. They kind of just felt like filler backspace. In a way that doesn't usually happen in these, like, type of after party, like, scenarios. I feel like those are really the times in which the lead, or in this case leads, solidifies those connections with people that they might not have otherwise had a chance to talk to. So this is kind of weird in that sense. And we do see the first guy tell Rachel that he's not interested in her, that he's only there for Gabby. And that was super awkward and super heartbreaking. I feel like we all knew that this was coming, right? Like, we've kind of been seeing that, like, this has been teased. There's going to be a bit of, like, an awkward gap between the guys that are there for Gabby and the guys that are there for Rachel and vice versa. And I think it's also, like, one of those unspoken but, like, kind of known things that, like, Gabby could kind of carry her own season and Rachel maybe couldn't. That's a really unfortunate and tough, like, feeling and notion to kind of live with and to kind of be reminded of in your face while you're literally carrying the show. So I really hate that for her, and I hate that it's being put so bluntly in her face. But also, this kid is telling her this. It's like, who are you? Like, he literally says it with, like, zero emotion on his face. He's like, yeah, I feel like I have a connection with Gabby. And it's like, but does Gabby have a connection with you? You know, I feel like you shouldn't be, like, ruling out all your options here, buddy, because I don't know if I see something budding between you and Gabby. So if I were you, I'd be trying to make connections wherever I can, because he just seemed like a lump on a log, in my opinion. But Logan pulls up to kind of save the day, and I will say at first, like, in the first episode and, like, the first few minutes of his conversation with Rachel, like, I was kind of feeling Logan. I was kind of like, okay, like, he's a friendly dude. It does always give me pause when someone calls someone else brave for existing, for simply just like waking up and living their life. I feel like that buzzword is used a lot in like fat phobic dialogue, like, oh, you're so brave for wearing a bathing suit. And of course that's not what's happening here, but I still feel like it's kind of like coded language, like, oh, you're doing something, couldn't be me, but here you are doing it anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's always kind of the connotation when someone says that, just like unprompted. But anyway, so Logan's over here calling Rachel brave and all this extra stuff. And I start to get the vibe that he just seems like just a hometown bar regular. I hope that makes sense to somebody out there. He just seems like he's the type of guy that like never left his hometown, pulls up to the bar on a weeknight and gives a girl a compliment. Not a very well thought out compliment, but pays a girl a compliment in exchange for a kiss. Like, that's literally, like, he literally had it down to a formula with both Gabby and Rachel. He was like, you're so brave. Can I kiss you? And then with Gabby, he was like, you have an ocean. Can I kiss you? Like, he just says, okay, 1 + 1 = 2, done. So I don't know that he's gonna get very far with either of these ladies, but I was glad that in the moment he was there just to kind of like restore Rachel's confidence, because he is a good looking guy. He seems to be pretty easy to talk to and like have a conversation with. So if anything, I'm glad that he was just able to make her feel better about herself for that night. So then we have our first one-on-one date for Rachel. And again, here we are, y'all, with these bland outfits. Okay, Rachel is pulling up with a beige leather jacket, a light blue crop top, tank top activity, and some light blue mom jeans. And like individually, I don't have a problem with any of those pieces. Like, they all looked good on her, like as separate concepts. But I just feel like to make this outfit really work, I felt like she needed one of those pieces to be a more potent color, right? Like, I felt like maybe the blue on the top could have been like a deeper shade of blue. The jeans could have been darker. Like, just something needed to be a bit more potent to like draw your attention somewhere on her body. You know what I mean? All the pastel in the outfit just kind of washed her out entirely and took away like any sort of like cuteness that was there in the actual like pieces themselves. So I saw the vision, I really did, but like the execution just wasn't working for me. So then we take a zero gravity plane ride with Jordan, and it looked like a lot of fun. It looked like they were having a good time. They were laughing, they were joking, they were doing push-ups. They seemed very comfortable with each other right away, just like as people interacting. And they also seemed to have like good physical chemistry. Like, when they started making out mid-air, I was like, that looks like so much fun. Like, that must be such a really cool feeling. And so I was having a lot of fun just like watching the date. And then we go to the dinner portion, and this is the look I have been wanting from Miss Rachel. Okay, she comes in, we have a mini dress, it is red, it is sparkly, we have a red lip, we have a high pony. I'm loving all of it. All of it looks so good on her. The dress is totally form-fitting to her body, shows off all her curves in all the right places, and I'm just here for it all. Okay, if we could just get this level for the rest of the season, I would be a happy camper. Okay, I could not take my eyes off of Rachel during this dinner portion. So then we get into the actual conversation between Rachel and Jordan, and right off the bat, I will say I kind of sensed where Rachel was gonna like obviously end up with. Like, she wasn't feeling it, spoiler alert. She decided she was not feeling it. She had a gut feeling, sent him home in the middle of the date. And from the beginning, I kind of could have predicted that this was going to happen, just because I felt as though she was leading the conversation, right? I felt like she was having to ask him questions and kind of pull information out of him. And I feel like the lead doesn't necessarily like to host the conversations, especially on the dinner dates. I feel like the lead prefers to be in the role, just in the backseat role, and receive the information. Like, they're kind of like, I've brought you here on this date, and I would like to hear what you have to say to me, you know? And I don't feel like Jordan was really measuring up to that role. The story that he told, as valid as it was, you know, he was talking about his siblings and his parents and their divorce, and like how he felt like he had to manage everyone's emotions in that situation. Definitely a very valid experience, but I feel like it was disjointed in the sense that there was no specific conclusion and there was no takeaway. I feel like The Bachelor is very like known for having people come to these like dinner portion of these dates and kind of pour their heart out, but it usually is something that like the contestant has like thought of, like, I want to share this on my date tonight, and like this is what I want to, like, this is the conclusion that I want the lead to be able to draw from this story. And I feel like Jordan, he had part A thought of, like, this is the story I want to share, but not part B. Like, he didn't have, like, this is what I want Rachel to walk away with from this story. Do I personally feel like that is a reason for elimination? No. But I can see why Rachel kind of gotta, like, I can see why it gave her a little bit of pause. I can see why she was kind of maybe like, is he not feeling it? Like, is there a reason why we're not connecting? Because this conversation is feeling very just kind of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to get out of this conversation. You know, like, I can see why she would come to the conclusions that she did. Although I don't necessarily agree with them for a couple of reasons. I feel like, first of all, like, first dates are awkward, especially when, like, you don't know the person going into it, which, like, 9 times out of 10 is what happens, especially in this age of, like, online dating, you know what I mean? Just, like, thinking about it in a real world sense. Like, you're going on a date with a stranger. It's awkward. You're trying to create something from nothing. You're trying to think of topics to discuss. And of course, like I said, on The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, like, the contestants do have producers like prep them and help them think through what they want to share on that date. But you're still talking to someone that, like, you don't know at the end of the day. So for me, I always give someone like the benefit of the doubt if it's awkward the first time around. You know what I mean? Because it's like, if that's the time, like, that's the time when it's going to be awkward. You're going to have pauses. There's going to be silences. You're not going to know what to say. Like, it's just, it can be a weird situation for all involved. But for me personally, like, an awkward first date, which is different than a bad first date. An awkward first date is not necessarily, for me, grounds to, like, be like, I don't want to see this person again. Clearly, Rachel has a different way that she navigates first dates, and that is totally fine. But a part of me wishes that she had been a bit more lenient and given him another chance, just because they had a great day portion of their date. They had great chemistry at the flying extravaganza. They have a lot in common. You know, I don't know how many more guys that she's gonna meet that are able to, like, really get her career. And that's something that she's been talking about since Clayton's season. She's really looking for someone that can match her drive, that can really understand why she gets up and does what she does every single day. And Jordan was that person. He is in a very similar line of work, and they will never have to, like, question, like, their hours that they're working or, like, what work was like that day. You know what I mean? So they have a lot in common. They already had a great connection, and I don't think awkwardness is, like, complete grounds of, like, we're never going to be able to, like, have a functional conversation. I just think it means that you're two people that just, like, don't know each other. And that's kind of exciting, because that means that there's a lot to get to know, and that, like, you're not you don't feel like you've already know everything there is to know about this person, because that just means that they're a boring person. And also, I saw someone on Twitter, like, after the show, bring up a very interesting point that I think I agree with. They said that Rachel seemed as though she saw this guy who, like, she had a lot in common with and wasn't displaying any red flags up front, and then just ran away from it. And I think that's a very relatable feeling, especially when you're coming out of, like, a toxic relationship. Clayton wasn't necessarily toxic, but a relationship in which it was like, it left a poor taste in your mouth. You're kind of distrustful of dating and men and stuff like that. And so you're kind of like, you have your guard up, and sometimes, like, you have a knee-jerk reaction, and sometimes you pull away because you're like, aha, like, I don't know what this is, like, I'm not trying to get involved. And it seems like that's kind of what she did. I mean, I'm not here to question her gut feelings, but it just to me, there weren't enough reasons to justify pulling the trigger like that quickly. But it is what it is. She did what she did, and here we are. We still have Hayden. So hopefully this means more time for Hayden and she can get back talking to her country boy. But I am disappointed that Jordan kind of got the boot there. So then we backtrack a little bit to the house, and we're catching up with the guys in the day portion when they're just like hanging out. And Chris is hosting this whole conversation talking about like the Final Four, and he makes it a point to say that he plans to be in the Final Four as though that's his decision to make. And he's talking about that. He then goes on to say that it would be a deal breaker for him if he goes into the fantasy suites with one of the ladies and he finds out that they have slept with someone else in addition. If he sleeps with one of the ladies and then after that finds out that they have slept with someone else, that would be a deal breaker for him, and that would cause him to self-eliminate. Fine. Okay. All right, Christopher. Okay. So where to begin with unpacking this? So that's annoying for several reasons. Okay, first of all, which was made very clear throughout the whole episode, it's entirely too early to be thinking about fantasy suites. Like, entirely too early. Like, why is that on your mind? The guys are clearly very uncomfortable by this conversation, but they entertain it a little bit. And one of the questions that they ask is whether Christopher would tell these ladies, or whichever lady he would hypothetically be in the fantasy suites with, whether or not he would tell her before, during, or after the fantasy suites. And he kind of dips and dodges this question, and that's a whole issue in and of itself. Like, hypothetically, if he did make it to that point and then withheld that information, that's a deal breaker for him. That was my whole entire issue with Susie. Right? Like, that's fine. If I'm going to be the person at the end of this, I want you to have not slept with the other contestants. Like, that's a totally fine boundary for you to have, but that needs to be communicated. And that's where the controlling aspect of Chris's behavior comes in, because he has this like information in his head that he's using to make decisions about the relationship with the other person. And he's withholding that information. And on top of that, he's having consequences for the person that he's interacting with, making decisions based off of the lack of information that they don't have. And that's just not fair. You can't get mad at someone for being like, you crossed this boundary, when you never communicated what that boundary was in the first place. And again, this is all freaking hypothetical. Like, I don't even know like why Christopher is making me waste my breath unpacking this, because he's not worth anybody's time at this point. But anyway, the guys are like slightly entertaining this. They're talking about this at the pool. They go in the house, they're talking about it some more. And they're kind of like, you know, Quincy's kind of the union leader of this season. And he's like, hey, like, you were saying this at the pool. I just kind of want to get more clarification on that. And he's like, oh, what did I say? Be clear. And like every time a guy is trying to get a word into the conversation, he's like, hold up, let me provide you permission to speak to me in my court that I have anointed myself as presiding over. And let me just say, that is a very common like deflection strategy, to like focus so much on like what someone is saying and focus so much on like, you're not getting my words right. I said this, you're saying I said this when I actually said that, and it's like one word, one syllable off. You know, that's a very common deflection tactic, because it gets the person to focus on the details and to miss the big picture of the wildness that is coming out of your mouth. And they're too busy picking apart like, oh, like, okay, like, let me make sure I'm speaking correctly. And Chris says that he said this and he said that. And like, it just gets you caught up in all the details and distracts you from like this whole other smoke show that he's doing over here about just like how wild all of his statements are. So I say all that to say that I'm on to you, Chris. I'm on to you. So then we get a refreshing break from Christopher's antics, and we catch up with Nate and Gabby, and they're going on a date. They have the classic helicopter to hot tub date. Okay, I feel like this is like the third or fourth season in a row at this point where we've done this date. And let me just tell you, there are so many other dates in the world. People go on dates every single day. People are on a date right now. Like, can we just poll America and figure out what like the top 10 dates are and like change it up a little bit? Because I am so tired. I'm so tired. There's only so many times we can fly over the Hollywood sign and land onto a landing pad and get into our bathing suits and sit in some warm water. Like, I'm sick. I'm sick of it. Anyway, all that aside, Nate and Gabby enjoyed themselves on this adventure. They seemed to be having some good conversation. They were talking about like all the sites. They also had some really good physical chemistry right off the bat. So when I was able to put aside the actual content of the date and just focus on how they were enjoying it, it seemed like they had a really good time on their date portion of the date. And then we go into the night portion, of course. And you know, I got to comment on Gabby's dress. I really liked it. Gabriella is one person who knows how to work with color, okay? I liked the purple. It was very slinky and like silky, satin-esque kind of looking. We got the spaghetti straps. There's a little like tie business going on in the back, little crisscross. It was just very cute. It was very subtle, but also very classy, very youthful, but also very elegant. You know, I was feeling all of it. It was very much so giving. And so, of course, the big topic that Nate is ready to address during the dinner portion of the date is his 6-year-old daughter. And so he opens up about the fact that he is a father. He does have a daughter. He talks about how much he loves her, goes into her personality a little bit. And my favorite part of this whole like scene was actually Gabby's like processing it afterwards. Because of course my first thought was like, oh, okay, like, is Gabby trying to be a mom? Like, is she ready to step into the stepmom role? And Gabby acknowledged that like that was her first thought too. But then she follows it up and says, I'm allowed to like have this thought and like have this come into my mind, but also give myself that space and say, I don't have to make that decision right now. Like, I'm allowed to just have this question mark in my head and use the time that we have here to explore my relationship with him and think about if this is something I'm ready for or not. And honestly, like, that was, as someone who like is very anxious and is always trying to think 10 steps ahead of any situation I'm in, like, that was just such a grounding perspective to witness, just to watch someone be like, here's this massive question mark I have, but also I'm gonna put it down and just live in the moment. Who knew? Who knew that was possible? I love it. I'm here for it. And I'll be very interested to kind of see if her connection with Nate continues, to continue to watch as she processes the very real factor of what it would mean stepping into a relationship with him and taking on that potential stepmom role. So then we go to the rose ceremony. We pull up, we catch up with Jesse a little bit, get our first glimpse of Rachel and Gabby's outfits. Surprise, surprise, I was not a fan of Rachel's outfit. She had a black dress with like a little mesh activity going on at the torso, and it kind of looked like a two-piece in the back, one piece in the front type of business, which like on itself I'm fine with. The only piece that really threw it off and like ruined the whole dress for me was like the little like sequined, like bedazzled brooch activity that she had going on right underneath her chest. I did not like that design. It was just not an appealing design to me. And so much so that it turned me off from the whole dress. But I am glad that we got away from beige, and she did not look as washed out tonight, so I will give her that. Gabby's dress, it was brown, it was sparkly up top, and then we had some brown mesh at the knee and below. I didn't like it. I did not like it. Very neutral experience for me witnessing this dress. I feel like she can do better, and I'm sure she will. So then we didn't catch up with a lot of the guys tonight. Most of it was spent on drama, which I'm not complaining about. But the one guy that we did catch up with was Mario. He made it a point to talk to Rachel tonight, and I feel like a lot of people are gonna have mixed reactions to this. Let me know in the comments what you thought of his interactions with Rachel, and like what you thought about him kind of pursuing her as opposed to like sticking just with Gabby. I wasn't mad at it. I feel like it's early enough on where like you don't have to have your mind made up as a contestant. And furthermore, I didn't feel as though he wasn't expressing his interest in Rachel in a way that I felt like was disrespectful to the connection that he had with Gabby. Nor did I feel like it was a disingenuous interest in Rachel. I feel like he genuinely was like, I don't know Rachel. I have a good feeling about Gabby. Let me see what's going on with Rachel and then go from there. I feel like he's totally in his right to do that at this stage. I do feel like, moving forward, he should have enough evidence from both ladies now to kind of make a decision and figure out which way he's going. So if he's still kind of flip-flopping after this episode, I would have some question marks. But right now, in this moment, I was fine with it. I was like, you know what? You're figuring it out. Okay. So then we get to the drama. Then we get to the tea. We've got our union leader, Quincey, pulling up, trying to round up the troops to address the ladies. Well, just Rachel. I was really curious as to why they only felt the need to like tell one of them. That was never really like brought up. I guess obviously they knew that like whoever they told would go and tell the other person, but I felt like we could have just killed two birds with one stone and like told both of them at the same time. And no one asked me to be the union leader, so that is how Mr. Quincey wanted to do it. They tell Rachel what's going on. Of course, she's heated. She goes and gets Gabby. Gabriella, wastes no time collecting Mr. Christopher and saying, who do you think you are? Why are you talking about this? This is so inappropriate. I love the way she got straight to the point. Sis was wasting absolutely no time, and I respect it. I felt like Rachel seemed as though she would have been more willing to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt. She kept on, I felt like, giving him opportunities to kind of like make peace and kind of start afresh. She was like, you could apologize to us. Hint, hint, wink, wink. And he was like, I'm just going to continue to be condescending. And I feel like after like one or two tries of that, she was like, okay, whatever. Clearly you don't care enough. You don't value us enough. Us females. That's another thing I forgot to mention. When he first started referring to the women as females, he didn't even have to, if that had been all that he had said, like, scrap all the fantasy suite talk, scrap all the, like, sex ultimatum talk. If all he had said was in reference to these women as females, that would have told me literally everything I needed to know about him. Like, literally everything. And no, I will not elaborate. So they collected him, they dismiss him, and then he just doesn't leave. And I thought this was hilarious because, you know, the producers wanted us to get some more tea, because if they were really serious about it, they would have escorted him promptly into that the SUV to do his exit interview, what have you. And no one on security, no one on staff, no producer lifted not one single finger to make sure that Christopher did not enter back into that house. So he waltzed right back in, called a little team meeting, and while I'm glad that Gabby and Rachel stood their ground and escorted him out, like, yes, obviously he needs to leave, okay, but I watched for the drama and I really wanted to know what his plan was. Like, I really wish we could have seen more of that conversation that he was trying to host, because, like, where is he trying to go with that? Like, what was the plan? You know what I mean? Like, he has no power. Like, it's been established that these girls are not into him. They do not want him. So I don't really know, like, where he was trying to take that conversation. I guess we'll never know. But then we go into the rose ceremony. It's pretty uneventful. I literally don't even know who left. I was trying to write it down, and, like, they didn't have the gold little tagline on the guys who, like, left as they were doing their, like, exit interviews or whatever. So I was like, okay, bye, I guess. So that was kind of all. So excited to keep watching with you guys. Thank you for watching another episode of Brianna's Bachelor Breakdown, and I'll see you back here next week.